My dad hated me for years and kicked me out at 17. I skipped his funeral, and then my family turned on me. I didn't go to my father's funeral, and I didn't send flowers, or condolences, or even a polite note. I went to work that morning like it was any other day, and by noon, the messages started pouring in. How could you? He was your father. At least pretend to care. You're heartless. One even read, he forgave you before he died. You couldn't show up for that. That one stopped me, because it wasn't just a lie. It was a deliberate rewrite of everything that man ever did to me. My name is Ethan Bennett. I'm 28 now, but this story starts when I was 17, the day my father kicked me out of the house for good. We lived in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Nothing fancy. Single-story house, chain-link fence, one of those quiet neighborhoods that looks fine on the outside but hides a whole lot of broken behind closed doors. My father, Richard Bennett, was a veteran, big on discipline, even bigger on control. He didn't believe in talking things out. He believed in power, in being obeyed, respected, feared. I was his only son, and somehow, that made it worse. I have 3 sisters, Kelsey, Emma, and Haley. And let me be clear, I love them. Before we go further, don't forget to like this story, hit subscribe, and tap the bell, so you don't miss what happens next. But when we were growing up, they were the golden children. The ones who got to sit at the table during dinner while I was made to stand if I talked back. The ones who got birthday parties, new clothes, and free rides to soccer games, while I got life lessons and long lectures that ended with slammed doors or worse. He didn't hit me every day, but when he did, it was never out of discipline. It was about making sure I knew my place. The worst night of my life happened in the fall of my senior year. I had gotten a full-ride scholarship to Oklahoma State, something I worked my ass off for. I kept it secret for weeks because I was terrified of how he'd react. Somehow, I still wanted him to be proud. When I finally told him, expecting at least a nod, maybe a good job, he looked me dead in the face and said, "You think you're too good for this family now?" And then he told me to pack my bags. No discussion. No negotiation. Just get out. I had $143 in my wallet, a duffel bag of clothes, and nowhere to go. I slept in a friend's garage that night. That was the last time I ever lived under my father's roof. My mom, Linda, didn't stop him. She didn't even argue. She stood by the fridge, arms crossed, eyes down like she wasn't part of it at all. That might have hurt more than his words. For the next 10 years, I built my life without them. No calls. No holiday visits. No invites. Kelsey reached out once, when her daughter was born. I sent a gift. Emma followed me on Facebook. We messaged a bit, mostly surface level. Haley? Nothing. Radio silence. And honestly, that was fine. Because I had moved on. Or at least, I thought I had. Everything changed 2 months ago, when I got a call from Emma. She never called. So when I saw her name light up my phone, I hesitated. Then answered. "Ethan," she said. Her voice cracked. "He's dying." I didn't say anything. "He's asking for you," she continued. "He wants to see you before it happens. He wants to make things right." I didn't know whether to laugh or scream. Because now, after everything, he wanted peace? He didn't want peace. He wanted forgiveness without doing the work. I told her I'd think about it. And I did. For about 30 seconds. Then I texted her. "I won't be coming. I wish him peace in his own way. But I'm not reopening those wounds." She left me on read. That was the end of it. Or so I thought. He died a week later. And on the morning of his funeral, while my family stood in suits and black dresses, pretending we had been whole, I went to work. But then something happened. A package arrived. No return address, just my name in bold, capital letters. Inside was a letter. A real, handwritten letter. Folded once, sealed in a yellowing envelope. It was dated 6 months before his death. And it was addressed to me. That's where it gets complicated. Because the letter? It didn't match the version of him everyone else remembered. It wasn't apologetic. It wasn't soft. It wasn't redemptive. It was cruel. Deliberately so. He wrote, "You never amounted to anything, and I was right to throw you out. Don't come sniffing around when I'm gone. I gave you nothing because you earned nothing. You're not my son. You never were." I stared at the letter for hours. It wasn't just the words. It was that my family, my sisters, my mother had all said he asked for me, that he wanted to make peace. But the man lying in that casket had sealed his hatred in ink. 6 months before he died. Which meant someone lied. Someone read this letter and decided to cover it up. To rewrite the story, make him look like a remorseful father instead of the man who nearly destroyed me. And that was a mistake. Because I wasn't that scared kid anymore. I had power now. A career. A name. A voice. and I was going to find out who lied and why they needed me silent. I didn't sleep that night. The letter sat on my kitchen counter like a loaded weapon. Part of me wanted to burn it. Another part wanted to post it on Facebook for every cousin and aunt who called me heartless. But the part that won, the one that couldn't rest until I knew, told me to confront the one person who could give me answers. My mother. Linda Bennett. The woman who stood in the corner while my father screamed. The woman who never raised her voice. Never stepped in. Never chose me. I hadn't seen her in almost a decade. Not since the night I packed my bag and left at 17, choking back tears while she pretended not to watch. But I knew where she lived. Same house. Same zip code. Same beige paint flaking off the siding. I drove there on a Sunday. The same day she'd usually be at church, pretending she believed in grace and forgiveness. She opened the door slowly, as if she was expecting someone else. Then her eyes widened. Ethan. Her voice was soft, like she was afraid I might evaporate if she spoke too loudly. Can I come in? I asked. She hesitated, then stepped aside. The house hadn't changed. Same worn carpet. Same sagging couch. Same dusty picture of my dad in uniform on the mantel, like a shrine. She offered coffee. I declined. I sat. She hovered. I pulled out the envelope. Her face paled instantly. You've seen it, I said. She sat down slowly, her hands trembling. Where did you get that? It was mailed to me. After the funeral. She closed her eyes like she had a migraine building. He told me he wrote something. But I thought, she stopped. You thought what? I thought it was about closure. I didn't read it. I watched her carefully. I don't believe you. She didn't deny it. Didn't even try. Just looked at me with those tired, foggy eyes and whispered, I didn't want you to carry that hatred after he was gone. I laughed, sharp and bitter. He wrote that 6 months before he died. 6 months. You had time. Time to tell the truth. Instead, you all stood around telling me he wanted peace. That he forgave me. And I was the monster for not showing up. She flinched like I'd slapped her. I was trying to protect the family. No, I said. You were protecting him. Still. Even now. She wiped her eyes. I was scared of him, Ethan. You think you were the only one. That hit like a punch to the ribs. Because I realized. She was telling the truth. She had been scared. For decades. And I had waited all my life for her to stand up, to fight for me, when she'd been fighting for survival herself. It didn't excuse it, but it explained it. You let him make me the enemy, I said. You stood by while he beat me down emotionally, sometimes physically, and then let the rest of the family believe I was the problem. I didn't know how to stop him. You didn't even try. She looked up at me, tears running down her face now. I was wrong. And those 3 words came too late. I stood to leave. But before I reached the door, she said something that froze me in place. The letter isn't the worst of it. I turned slowly. What? There's another one. Another letter? She nodded. I found it in his drawer after he died. It was sealed. Marked for your sisters. And I read it. My heart pounded. What did it say? She swallowed hard. It was full of lies. About you. About things that never happened. He wrote that you stole from him. That you tried to blackmail him. That you threatened us before you left. My knees nearly buckled. He said you came to him, crying, begging for money. That he gave you a second chance and you spit in his face. I stared at her in disbelief. And you let them read that? I tore it up. But they still believe the version of him they want to believe. She nodded. Yes. It wasn't just the letter. It was the legacy. He had spent years rewriting history, not just for himself, but for everyone else. And now that he was gone, the story he left behind was the only one they knew. Unless I changed it. I want them to know, I said, voice low. Ethan. No, I snapped. I'm done being silent. I'm done being the villain in someone else's fairy tale. She didn't stop me. She didn't argue. She just looked down and said, Then you better tell the truth loud enough to be heard. I walked out of that house and went straight to a lawyer. I had the original letter. The handwriting matched. The envelope was dated. I had evidence of abuse. Old school records, a single police report filed by a neighbor when I was 14, even medical records from a bruised rib I told urgent care was a football injury. And most importantly, I had nothing to lose. The next week, I contacted every member of my family who had reached out after the funeral, and I sent them a scanned copy of the letter. With this note, this is the man you honored. The man you said loved me. I don't need your pity. I just want you to know, I didn't walk away. I was pushed. I thought that once I shared the letter, once they saw the words in his own handwriting, my sisters would understand. I thought they'd call, apologize, tell me they were sorry for doubting me. But that's not what happened. Not even close. Kelsey was the first to respond. She sent a single message. This is disgusting. You waited until he died to attack his character? Seriously? Then Emma chimed in. You're just bitter. You think this changes the fact that you abandoned us? Haley didn't say anything at all, which almost made it worse. I was stunned. They thought I had faked the letter, or exaggerated it, or held onto it just to stir up drama once he was gone. But here's the thing about people raised in a lie. The truth sounds like betrayal. And I was the one breaking the spell. I didn't respond right away. I let them sit with it. Because deep down, I knew something they didn't. He had more secrets. And secrets like his? They always come to the surface eventually. It happened 3 weeks later. I was working late when my phone lit up. Haley, the sister I hadn't spoken to in over a year. I let it ring once before answering. Hello? Her voice was quiet, shaky. I found something. My pulse spiked. A letter. It was in Mom's sewing cabinet, tucked in an old envelope with my name on it. But it wasn't from her. I didn't breathe. It's from him. She sent me a photo, a scanned page of his handwriting. A letter dated 3 months before his death, addressed directly to Haley. And what it said blew everything wide open. Haley, I always loved you. You were the bright one, the loyal one. I hope you never fall for Ethan's lies. He'll come around after I'm gone. He'll try to poison you against your own blood. But he's sick. Always has been. He lied about me to teachers, to the police, even to your mother. He cost us everything. She called again, crying now. Why would he say this? Why write it down? I sat on the floor of my living room, the same copy of his letter still sitting on my desk. Because he knew I wouldn't stay silent forever. So he tried to get ahead of it. Preemptively. She sniffled. He said you were dangerous. And what do you believe? Silence. Then, I believe what I saw growing up. You weren't dangerous. You were hurt. I felt something tighten in my chest. Not relief exactly. Something closer to grief. Because for the first time, someone saw me. We stayed on the phone for almost 2 hours that night. She told me how things got even darker in the house after I left. How Dad would drink in silence. Snap over nothing. How he tore into her once for wearing the wrong perfume. He never hit me, she said, but he made me scared to exist around him. And then she said something I'll never forget. I think you needed someone to blame. And when you were gone, it was just easier to keep blaming you. Over the next few days, the tone started to shift. Haley sent the letter to Kelsey and Emma, without me asking. At first, nothing. Then, cracks in the wall. Emma texted, I didn't know he wrote us all different things. That's messed up. Kelsey sent a voice note. I'm not ready to talk. But I need time. This shook me. They weren't ready to apologize. But they weren't defending him anymore either. And that was the beginning of something I never thought I'd see again. Honesty. Mom called me, too. Said she didn't know about the second letter. That she thought she had destroyed the only one he'd written. I didn't yell. I didn't blame. I just told her what I'd told the rest of them. I'm not here to ruin your memories. I'm just done pretending mine don't exist. That week, I got a strange idea. One I couldn't shake. I printed out all the letters. Mine, Haley's, every page of handwriting we had. And I took them to a forensic document examiner in Tulsa. She ran them through her system. Compared handwriting, ink age, postmark dating. All of it came back legitimate. I had proof. Beyond emotion. Beyond memory. Proof. So I did something bold. I booked a conference room at a local community center. And I invited every relative who had spoken out against me since the funeral. I told them I had something to say. Not out of vengeance. Out of truth. I thought maybe 5 people would show up. 10 if I was lucky. But when I stepped into the rented conference room at the old community center that Saturday morning, nearly 22 family members were already there. Cousins. Aunts. 2 uncles I hadn't seen in over a decade. Even Emma and Kelsey sat together near the back, eyes down, arms crossed. Haley was already there too, standing near the door with a coffee in hand, like she didn't quite know where to stand. But when I walked in, she smiled softly. A silent nod that said, I've got you. That gave me enough air to breathe. I walked up to the front. No microphone. Just me and a folder. I stood still for a few seconds, watching them watch me, these people who had only ever heard one side of the story. The version passed down through whispers and Sunday lunches. The version where I was the prodigal son who ran off and never looked back. But today, they were going to hear the truth. I want to thank you for coming, I began, voice low but steady. I know this isn't a typical Saturday morning for anyone, but I asked you here because for most of my life, I let other people define who I was. I let one man in particular, Richard Bennett, build the version of me that most of you believe. People shifted in their chairs. A few looked down. A few narrowed their eyes. I took out the first letter. This is a letter he wrote to me 6 months before he died. It arrived after the funeral. I hadn't heard from him in over 10 years. I paused, letting that settle. Then I began to read. You never amounted to anything, and I was right to throw you out. Don't come sniffing around when I'm gone. I gave you nothing because you earned nothing. You're not my son. You never were. I read it all. Every word. The room went silent. The same man they had eulogized, toasted to at the after-service potluck, had written that about his own son. One of my aunts gasped quietly. Another cousin shook her head. But I wasn't finished. I pulled out Haley's letter next. I'm not the only one who got one, I said. He wrote one to my sister, too. Ethan will come around after I'm gone. He'll try to poison you against your own blood. But he's sick. Always has been. I read that one out loud, too. Haley stood beside me now, arms crossed tightly. I didn't have to ask, she wanted to be there. After I finished, I set the letters on the table and looked up. I'm not asking you to hate him, I said. I'm asking you to see him. A long pause. Then a voice from the back. You expect us to believe he meant those things? People say crazy things when they're dying. It was Uncle Dan, Dad's younger brother. Always loyal. Always loud. I nodded slowly. I don't expect anything, I said. I brought these letters to a forensic analyst. They were verified. Ink. Handwriting. Postmarks. All real. Dan opened his mouth, then closed it. Because facts don't argue. I'm not here to ruin anyone's memories, I said. If he was kind to you, good. I hope you remember that version. But he wasn't kind to me. He wasn't a father. And the story you've all been told, that I was ungrateful, that I chose to leave, that story isn't true. I glanced at my sisters. Emma was crying now. Kelsey looked pale. I was kicked out. At 17. For getting a scholarship. For being proud of something he didn't control. I let my voice rise, just a little. And when I didn't come crawling back, he made sure to poison everyone against me before he died, so he could die feeling right. Dead silence. Then, unexpectedly, a voice near the front. I remember that night. It was Aunt Maria, my mom's cousin. Older, quiet, someone I hadn't spoken to in years. She looked around the room. I was staying with Linda that weekend. I saw the bruises on Ethan's ribs. I asked her what happened, and she said he fell in gym class. But I knew. I didn't say anything back then. But I always knew. The air left the room. And with it, the myth of Richard Bennett began to crack. Afterward, no one rushed to hug me. No one gave speeches. But people lingered. They looked at the letters. Took photos. Whispered in corners. It wasn't vindication. But it was exposure. And sometimes, that's enough. Before I left, Emma came up to me. Her mascara had run. She looked exhausted. I didn't know, she said. I mean, I thought I did. But I didn't. I nodded. I know. I'm sorry. And this time, I believed her. Outside in the parking lot, Haley walked with me. You okay? She asked. Getting there, I said. Then she handed me a folded piece of paper. What's this? I found it in Mom's old recipe book. Another letter. This one was meant for Mom. I opened it slowly, skimmed the first line, and froze. Because this one didn't just rewrite me. It rewrote everything. I sat in my car with the paper Haley had handed me, afraid to unfold it. Not because I thought it would hurt, but because I knew it would. The letter was thin, one page. Yellowed slightly at the edges. The handwriting instantly recognizable. My father's all-caps script, jagged and cold. He had written my mother her own goodbye. Not a love letter. Not an apology. A final manipulation. I read it in silence. The engine off. The air conditioner blowing warm air across my face as the words sunk in. Linda, if you're reading this, it means I'm already gone. I doubt you'll cry, but I also know you'll survive. You always do. I'm not sorry for how I raised Ethan. I did what needed to be done. That boy was soft, defiant, ungrateful. You let him get away with everything, and I had to be the one to break him before the world did. Don't let him fool you. He'll come around trying to act like a victim. He was never a victim. He was a liar, a manipulator, and you were too blind to see it. You always were. My hands were shaking. I had to read it 3 times just to believe it was real. It wasn't just a letter. It was a window into a mind that had always seen me as an enemy. Not a son, not a child, a problem. I drove straight to Haley's apartment, the letter still in my hand, knuckles white. She opened the door, and I held it out without saying a word. She read it in full, her eyes narrowing line by line. When she finished, she looked at me, speechless. He really thought he was right, she said finally. He didn't just believe it, I whispered. He needed it to be true. Because if I was the problem, he never had to face what he'd done. Later that night, I sat with that letter on my kitchen table beside the other 2. I kept thinking about one sentence. You were too blind to see it. It hit me harder than I expected. Because it wasn't just about me. It was about my mother. I thought I had come to terms with her silence. I had written it off as fear, trauma, maybe even survival. But now, with this letter, I began to wonder, what if she agreed with him? The next morning, I drove back to the house. I didn't call. I just showed up. Mom opened the door in her robe, blinking in surprise. Ethan. I stepped inside without waiting. I need to talk to you. She closed the door slowly behind me, looking like she already knew. I laid the letter on the kitchen counter. Her eyes locked on it. Then she sighed. I was hoping you wouldn't find that one. I looked her in the eyes. You read it. She nodded once. When? 2 days after he died. I found it in his sock drawer. And she closed her eyes. He always blamed me for how you turned out. Said I was too soft with you. That I let you get away with disrespect. And you believed him? Her lip trembled. I wanted to believe he was just angry. That he was venting. But the truth is, I agreed with him more than I wanted to admit. That hurt worse than any slap could have. I took a step back. You thought I was disrespectful? She looked down. You questioned him. You stood up to him. That was dangerous. He didn't like that. And neither did I, because it meant there'd be consequences. There it was. Not fear. Not helplessness. Convenience. She didn't speak up not because she couldn't, but because it was easier not to. Easier to let me be the target than risk being one herself. I was 17, I said quietly. A child. I know. Then why didn't you stop him? She looked up at me, finally, tears welling, but I wasn't moved this time. Because it worked, she whispered. You left. The house got quiet. I stared at her like I was looking at a stranger. Because in a way, I was. She poured herself coffee like it was any other morning. Like we hadn't just opened a grave in the middle of her kitchen. I'm sorry, she said. But she didn't say it like she meant it. She said it like she was tired. Not sorry. Just done. I walked out without another word. For days, I couldn't stop thinking about it. All the times I'd waited for her to choose me. All the times I'd given her the benefit of the doubt. All the letters. All the wounds. All the silence. It was never just him. She played her part too. That week, I spoke to a therapist for the first time in years. I laid it all out. The childhood, the letters, the family, the confrontation. And she said something that stuck. Closure isn't about getting them to admit what they did. It's about not needing them to anymore. So I took the letters. All 3 of them. I scanned them, saved them in a folder titled Truth, and locked them in a safe. Not to forget, but so I didn't have to carry them anymore. Madison came over later that weekend. She sat with me while I told her the full story. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was unraveling. I felt like I was letting go. It had been nearly a year since the day I stood in front of my entire family and read my father's words out loud. A year since I found the letter to my mother that twisted everything I thought I knew about her, too. A year of therapy, of rebuilding, of silence. Haley and I stayed close. Emma came around, slowly. Kelsey? Still distant, but no longer aggressive. Mom? We hadn't spoken in over 9 months. And honestly, I didn't miss it. I had made peace, not with the past, but with the fact that I couldn't change it. I had accepted that I would never get the apology I deserved. And then, the phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. A local area code, though, so I answered. Is this Ethan Bennett? The voice asked. Yes. This is Thomas Blake. I'm an attorney with Walker & Grant in Tulsa. I'm the executor for your father's estate. Richard Bennett. My mouth went dry. I thought everything was handled already. Yes, most of it was. But there was a supplemental will, a codicil, filed about 2 months before his passing. It was sealed. And your name was listed. I froze. What does that mean? It means you're a beneficiary. My mind immediately jumped to the worst. Was it another trap? One final manipulation? Was he going to leave me with debt? Obligations? A twisted posthumous punishment? But Blake kept talking. It's a small parcel of land. 15 acres just outside Owasso. Unused. Never developed. In his name. And now, officially, in yours. I blinked. Why? There was a pause. He didn't say. 2 days later, I sat in the law office, staring at the signed document. There it was. My name. Ethan Bennett, heir to land owned by the man who once told me I was nothing. The lawyer slid a thin folder across the desk. There was also a note. Handwritten. Not legally binding. But it was kept with the documents. My stomach churned. Another letter. But this one wasn't hateful. If he sees this, it means he came back. I never understood you. Maybe I didn't want to. But if you're reading this, then I was wrong about at least one thing. You didn't disappear. You survived. It wasn't an apology. But it wasn't an attack either. It was something in between. And for a man like him, maybe that was as close to remorse as he could get. I stood on the land a week later. Just empty fields, cracked dirt, and a few cedar trees near the edge. The sun was setting. It was peaceful, and for a second, I felt a strange calm, like I could finally exhale. Madison walked up beside me, slid her hand into mine. "What are you going to do with it?" she asked. "I don't know," I said. "Sell it? Build something? Maybe just let it sit. You don't have to decide today." I nodded, because she was right. For once, no one was rushing me. No one was pushing or punishing or rewriting the story. This choice was mine. And that's when it hit me. He gave me the one thing he never offered while he was alive. Space. Not love. Not clarity. But space. A piece of land. Unclaimed. Undirected. Mine. And what I chose to do with it would define how this story ended. So now I want to ask you, the person listening, watching, reading, if you were in my shoes. Would you keep the land? Use it? Sell it? Let it rot? Would you see it as a gift? A curse? Or just a strange, empty feel from a man who never gave anything until he was already gone? Let me know in the comments, because I'm still standing here. Still deciding. And maybe that's okay. Maybe some endings don't need closure. Just a quiet place to breathe.